Your Mama's Kitchen is brought to you by Rivian.
We got this gigantic fire going and no fire extinguisher. No, we don't know what to do. And we're like, Mom, Dad, the toaster's on fire. My mom jumps up out of the bed and she came into the kitchen, picked up the toaster, unplugged it, picked it up and put it in the sink and turned the water on and put the fire out. Just like that.
Badass.
And
Total badass.
We almost burned the house down. And my mom was so understanding and caring. She was more worried about us being traumatized that she said, "Oh man, I'm glad you all. I'm glad the house didn't burn down, and now I can get a new toaster." So she was like celebrating the fact that we enabled her to get a toaster, and I know she was probably scared to death when she came in there. And flames going up to the ceiling.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Your Mama's Kitchen. This is a place where we explore how we are shaped as adults by the kitchens that we grew up in as kids. Not just the food, but all the things that happened there. The conversations, the laughter, the music on the radio. I'm Michelle Norris, and our guest today is Craig Robinson. Now, there are a couple of famous Craig Robinsons. There's the comedic actor known for his roles in The Office and films like Hot Tub Time Machine. He's a funny dude, but I'm here today to talk to another guy who also happens to be a funny dude, who also happens to be a former Division I basketball coach and executive with the NBA and a successful banker, who also happens to be the big brother of Michelle LaVaughn Robinson Obama, who also happens to be the co-host of a new podcast with his little sister, Michelle Obama, called IMO. I hope you're listening to that podcast, but I'm glad you're here today to listen to this podcast for this conversation with Craig Robinson. So glad you are with me.
Oh, Michelle, I'm so happy to be here. And you were so kind with that introduction. Thank you.
I could have gone on to say that he's also a stand-up human being. He's a great father. He's a great husband. He's literally one of the funniest people that I know. And as you know, in our first episode, we talked to your sister.
Yes, I do, and I have a lot of work to do to keep up with that. But that was a great episode, by the way.
It really was.
And the dish she talked about was one of our family's favorite dish. My mom's red rice. Oh, just thinking about that makes my mouth water.
I just made a batch of it 2 weeks ago.
You did? How did it turn out?
I did. It turned out well. Or so people said it was. They said it was all that, and then it was all gone.
So that's how you know. That's how you know.
That's a good sign. I've worked that into my repertoire, and it's great because you can make it. It's as with many things, better the next day.
Oh yeah.
And it's good cold.
It's good, really good cold. We used to take it when we went on picnics and we went to the drive-in. We'd take it with us and eat it, room temperature with some Kentucky Fried Chicken or my mom's fried chicken.
That sounds great. So since I talked to your sister, I have a picture of the kitchen with the yellow vinyl tablecloth.
Right.
With the phone with the long cord on the wall, with the window that was placed just so. But I'm wondering if there are certain things that you remember, because people can grow up in the same house and live in the same space, but have slightly different memories.
Tell me about it.
What was the kitchen like that you remember growing up in that house on Euclid Avenue?
The things she mentioned, I remember very well. And she mentioned on your show, and I'll mention here, it was really a small kitchen that had to have been reconfigured into being a kitchen because it was so small and so oddly shaped. But what I really remember is that right outside the window that she was talking about was our back porch. So it was one of those screened in back porches. So it was probably in Chicago 9 months out of the year you could sit out there. And then after that, you couldn't sit out there because it'd be freezing. but we used to, when it was really hot, we would eat out there sometimes. So we'd take a card table and card table chairs and eat out there. That was sort of our what's the term when you eat on the street? Um,
Patio or
yeah,
sidewalk cafe?
like bistro. It was
Oh,
like our
bistro.
bistro.
Yes.
It was like our
Yes.
bistro
Yes. I love
eating,
that.
right? And not only did we eat out there, we slept out there. Like we would put down a quilt and sleep out there. So I remember our kitchen being sort of multifaceted. It was where we engaged in our normal eating at the table, but it was also the portal to get to our back porch, which always felt like you were camping out.
So did you and your sister, Michelle Obama, have a secret language? Or, sometimes I even notice this with my own kids. We're at the kitchen table and they're having this silent conversation between the two of them. They're kicking each other under the table. They're like trying to decide who's going to ask, the question that something they want to do this weekend. Did that happen between the two of you?
Now that you asked that question, it probably did, and it probably um, had to do with how were we going to eat these disgusting vegetables or get rid of them somehow without my mom and dad finding out, right? And we didn't have any pets, so we couldn't like slough it off to them. And I do remember that I would help her out if there was something on her plate that she didn't want to eat. Like if people weren't paying attention, I would take it off her plate and eat it. Because my sister was an extremely picky eater. But we grew up, my mom did a good job of cooking for somebody who wasn't sort of a master chef. But back then, nobody did good cooking vegetables. They were just either boiled or steamed. People didn't cook them well like they are cooked now that make them delicious. So we were always rolling our eyes at the vegetables. And my dad used to eat those vegetables like, they were going out of style. So he loved my mom's vegetables. And my sister and I would look at each other like, what is he doing? He's got a mouthful of those vegetables and he's asking for more. It's like, please.
What are we talking about? Are we talking about lima beans?
We're talking
broccoli,
about, all right, so I'll go
canned
from,
peas.
we're talking lima beans for sure. We didn't like those. Spinach back then was not good because it was cooked in a pot and boiled down to, it was so bitter.
Well, because it came in a frozen brick.
It came in the frozen brick.
A bird's eye frozen brick.
Oh. Nobody had fresh spinach back then, so it was that, and I liked the frozen peas and carrots. That you would use as sometimes when you sprained your ankle, you would put those on your ankle because you could form the peas and carrots around your ankle. I like those better than the canned peas and carrots. The canned peas and carrot, any canned vegetables were almost unedible.
Yeah. No. When you and your sister were growing up and she was such a picky eater, were you picky too?
No.
Because I'm imagining that I've seen your family pictures and there's this interesting growth cycle where Craig is about the same size as everybody else in the family. And then there's like one summer where suddenly he's like Jack and the Beanstalk, and it seemed like it just happened in like 4 months that suddenly you just grew up. Did your appetite grow along with your body like that?
So I always had a decent appetite, right? And I think that might have helped with the growth spurt that I had. And the pictures you saw were probably, I was normal size in 7th and 8th grade. And then by my sophomore year, I was taller than everybody in high school. But I have always been a healthy eater, especially when my mom, there were very few things that my mom fixed that I didn't like other than the vegetable part of the meal we focused on. The rest of the meal I always enjoyed. And unlike my sister, I was a breakfast guy. So when I woke up in the morning, I was always starving. So my mom fixed breakfast for us every single day. And she fixed me a full breakfast of bacon, eggs, toast. She'd make a bacon and egg sandwich sometimes. On the weekend, she'd make pancakes and waffles, and remind me to talk to you about. She used to teach us how to cook our own breakfast too. But my sister only ate peanut butter and jelly, and I know you all talked about this. You had to.
For years. She said
I
that's all
mean,
she had.
every day she had peanut butter and jelly. She didn't like eggs. She didn't. She would eat a pancake every now and then. I mean, who doesn't like pancakes and syrup and bacon? Who doesn't like bacon?
I know bacon is.
She didn't like bacon until she got to be an adult. So I ate all of that, and
So you're like, more for me.
I was more for me, and I was an active kid, so I was hungry at lunch, and then I'd be hungry at dinner. So I was not a picky eater, except for vegetables. And my mom, my mom made stuff like tuna fish salad
For breakfast?
sandwiches for lunch, and I loved them.
For lunch.
I love them. And I mean, she made fried bologna sandwiches. I mean, she made uh what people call sub sandwiches. We call heroes or grinders in Chicago. You remember that?
Yeah.
My mom used to make those. I mean, she was always fixing food. And it was, my mom, you know my mom. My mom loved us. But
Yes,
I
she did.
think she showed us how much she loved us in many ways, but especially in the kitchen, because like I said, she was not like sort of a trained cook. She cooked like you were saying, out of necessity, right? Because we had to eat, and fortunately, she was stay at home until Mish got to high school. So she, we always had dinner on the table when we came home.
Can we just say a word about your mother? I adored Marion Robinson. I mean,
I know you did.
She was funny. It seemed like the older she got, she was unfiltered.
Yes.
If she was thinking it, she was saying it.
Yes.
And she could crack the whole room up. Really, really wonderful. And the best of her lives on, and you and your sister.
Well, thanks.
And her wonderful grandchildren.
Well, she loved you and loved hanging out with you all, and I always tell Mish, Mom owes you, because I think getting to spend time with Mish and Barack in the White House and feeling needed and wanted added years to her life, and getting to travel and do those wonderful things. We used to talk about it when she'd get back, and she was kicking and screaming to go there, but once she got there, I thought I really felt like she added years to her life and was very fulfilled. So
and got out about town, made friends and was going to openings and concerts and doing her thing.
Yes, and as you said, as she got older, my mom was very polite, but as she got older, she just started saying whatever was on her mind. And it's like when you have children and they're little and they start talking, and you're like, "Hey, don't!" You like almost want to grab their mouth. That's what we wanted to do with her after she got in her 70s. We're like, "Mom, no, you just stop, wait till we get in the car."
I don't want to give away too much, but we were at a table once, and one of our friends was describing someone that she met, and going on, he does this and he does that and he lives there. And at the end of the table, suddenly you hear, "Boring."
Right. Yes. It's like
and then she had this little look on her face like,
"Child,
did I say that out
loud?"
She was very, very funny. It sounds like she was very patient also, because as I understand, there were a couple of times where you and, as you call her, Mish, that's what their family calls her, almost burned the house down. And one of those times happened in the kitchen.
Yes, we did.
What were y'all up to?
We were, it was after we got to be a little bit older, and I would say sort of 8 to 10 years old. Mish was 8, I was 10. when my dad didn't have to work, we always wanted to let them sleep in on the weekends. So we would get up and we would fix breakfast. And sometimes we fix breakfast for everyone, or sometimes we just fix breakfast for ourselves. Well, this was one of the days we were fixing breakfast for ourselves. And do you remember Toastums?
Mm-hmm. They were like
the precursor to Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts, yes.
And Pop-Tarts were Toastums were these pastries that you would put in the toaster, and they didn't have the frosting that Pop-Tarts had on them. So it was just the jelly-filled pastry with nothing to protect the jelly from coming out in the toaster. So you can see where I'm going with this. We had the Toastums in the toaster, and the jelly, before the toast popped up, the jelly seeped out into the toaster. And we didn't realize it because we're, doing our thing. And the next thing you know, Misha and I smell the smoke, and we look over and the toaster is on fire. And mean, Michelle, flames
Whoa.
are up to almost to the ceiling. And back in the day, houses caught on fire in Chicago and everywhere. It wasn't as safe and fire retardant.
But Chicago has always been a city where fire is an issue.
Chicago was a city where fires, ever since Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over the lantern. So we got this gigantic fire going and no fire extinguisher. No, we don't know what to do. And we're like, Mom, Dad, the toaster's on fire. My mom jumps up out of the bed, and our house is small enough where my mom jumped out of the bed. She'd take like 4 steps and she could be in the kitchen. And she came into the kitchen, picked up the toaster, unplugged it, picked it up and put it in the sink and turned the water on and put the fire out. Just like that.
Badass.
And
total badass.
We almost burned the house down. And my mom was so she was so understanding and caring. She was more worried about us being traumatized that she said, "Oh man, I'm glad you all. I'm glad the house didn't burn down, and now I can get a new toaster." So she was like celebrating the fact that we enabled her to get a toaster, and I know she was probably scared to death when she came in there. Flames going up to the ceiling.
Wow.
Yes, so you're right. We almost burned the house down, but most of the time we were able to pull off breakfast with no problem.
And I assume the Toastums were for you because
the Toastums were for me because she might have had a half one. I'm telling you, she would not eat anything. I'm trying to think what she would eat every now and then she'd have a bowl of cereal, but it would have to be one of those sugary cereals that my parents would not normally buy.
Oh, like Cap'n Crunch?
Like Lucky Charms. Mm-hmm. Or I think Captain Crunch was too harsh on the roof of her mouth.
You said Captain Crunch. It's like Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
Yes. It's Captain Crunch. You're right. Crunch. Oh, man. But you know what she liked? She liked the chocolatey cereal. Like she would eat
Cocoa Puffs?
Count Chocula or Cocoa Puffs or stuff like that, which would make the milk chocolatey. Because she wasn't a milk drinker. She didn't like milk.
Yeah, you'd have all those floating schmoties in the cereal.
Yeah.
When you're done.
If I wanted to get her, if we wanted to get her to drink milk, it had to be Nestle's Quick mixed in there. Yeah.
The story you just told about your mom and the toaster is interesting because they were of a generation. They would use that toaster, even if it got, didn't look right or the cord wasn't quite right. They would use it until it actually wore out. Like the idea of just replacing an appliance just 'cause was something that they would never, ever do.
No, Michelle, we were cleaning out Mom's apartment. There were can openers that I used when I was a kid in her drawer. You talk about not getting rid of anything. Yeah. And those casserole bowls that had the little design on the side and had the glass tops, she still had those. Corningware, she still had those.
Let me tell you something about this, though. Because our mothers passed away within days of each other, and their funerals were within days of each other. And so I was on a parallel track, cleaning out my mother's kitchen. And I found a bunch of her Corningware. Went online. Do you know that Corningware is worth, like, in some cases, hundreds, in some cases, thousands of dollars, particularly if you have one of their, yes. If you're listening to this, don't leave the show now, but when you're done, go check it out because it's the truth. And so we held on to all of it. When I realized that, and also because the memories.
It's just like so many memories, good memories you have with food and kitchen. And just you doing this show is such a wonderful idea, and just it makes folks think back to times where you got good smells, good taste,
and
my
good
mouth
lessons.
is watering.
And good lessons, because
yes.
The theory of the case at the show is that we learn our most important first lessons in the kitchen. More than almost any other room. We learn about grace and diplomacy. We learn about justice. We learn about grievance. We learn about generosity. And so when you think back on the kitchen that you grew up in, how did it shape the person you became as a basketball player, as a basketball executive and coach, as a banker, and now as a father who's raising his own kids, both adult and kids who are still in school?
That's it. That's a great question. There were so many lessons that I learned at the kitchen table, almost too numerous to name. But some of the things that have sort of carried forward that Kelly and I are trying to teach the boys when we have dinner together are sort of the, when Misha and I were kids, we rarely ate out.
Mm.
My parents were always, with the little bit that we had, and you know our history. We grew up poor. We didn't know we were poor, but we were poor. But they always had in their hearts room to help folks out. And that's what I remember my dad helping out his brothers, other people in our family, people at work, talking about how young people would come in and they wouldn't understand how to do a job, and he would take the time to sort of teach them the ropes and help them along. And my mom was at the school all the time, and she used to say to me, when you get done with your schoolwork, what are you doing with your time? And I was like, oh, no, just messing around. She's like, don't mess around. Why don't you help somebody who's having trouble? And it really has shaped who I am. And I'm so happy for that, because we live in a time now where you don't get much empathy out there from folks. And I'm just hoping that the people who are empathetic can just hang tough, be strong, keep being who you are, and show the rest of the world how to be, because that's how neighbors used to be. We always thought about what the other person was going through, and if we could help out, we did. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned sitting at the Robinson kitchen table.
It's interesting you talked about the self-awareness you have looking back over your shoulder and realizing how scarce money was. There's an interesting moment in your life. You're a successful banker. You're doing really well. You're making, more than your parents probably could have dreamed of, maybe more in half a year than they would make in a couple of years. And you decided that you wanted to step away from that. Your sister had a similar journey, where she stepped away and decided to go and do a job that was more aligned with service. In both cases, your parents were solidly behind you. Instead of saying, "What are you're going to walk away from that kind of money?" Which you could hear a parent saying, right?
Right.
You need to make as much money as you can and save as much as you can and get your foundation. But that's not what they said to you. Where do you think that came from, and how important was that to you?
I suspect, because I never had that discussion with them, they just were supportive. But I suspect that they both realized, like we all do in these jobs, how hard getting up and going to work every day is. And I know my dad particularly talked about that, how to enjoy your life, because once you start working, you're never going to stop working until you retire or die. And he always said, if you really want to enjoy your work, find something you like doing and then make that your job. So I think that's where that came from, when they realized that we were sort of at an early age realizing that there were more to these jobs than the paycheck. And I also think that because of the way they brought us up, when we decided to do things that were sort of more, um, for the lack of a better word, more sort of helping other folks, they were proud of it. They and and the, they enabled us to be in the position to have those kind of choices. Now I did talk to my parents about that. I would tell them all the time how, sacrificing so that Mish and I could go to a place like Princeton, and then, she went to Harvard Business School, and I mean Harvard Law School, and I went to the University of Chicago Business School. There was a lot of sacrificing so we could do that. Um, they enabled us to have the flexibility to do whatever we wanted after that. And I really think, they never put a premium on how much money one makes, because we didn't have money and we had fun at our house. I mean, fun. We didn't, like I always tell everyone, we didn't know we were broke. I mean, we had pizza every now and then on Fridays. We went to the drive-in. We thought we were living large. We go to the beach. We had a vacation in the summertime. We didn't know anything about, having a second home, but we certainly had a vacation and had fun. So, um, my parents sort of taught us, you can have fun on whatever budget you have. You have to be cognizant of how much you make versus how much you spend. And that's a lesson that people aren't teaching their kids these days, too.
And love is its own currency.
Yes. Yes.
If you can fill a house with love, you are wealthy.
And they certainly did.
Money is a difficult topic, but I did want to ask about something that you've written about. You've talked a little bit about when you got into Princeton, you didn't go to the neighborhood school. You went to Mark Carmel, which is an all-boys Catholic school, and excelled in basketball there, and were recruited to play for Princeton, which did not have athletic scholarships.
Right.
And so your parents had a difficult choice. It's a big deal to go to Princeton. And I'm sure you had other choices. Could you talk a little bit about the family discussions around that and what you learned as your parents are sitting at the kitchen table, probably that same kitchen table with the yellow vinyl tablecloth, deciding, how are we going to make this work?
Yeah, well, you're right, and it did happen at the kitchen table. And the way it was set up was, my dad was at the 12 o'clock seat. I was at the 6 o'clock seat. My mom was at the 9 o'clock, and Mish was at the 3 o'clock, and she was right up against the wall. Um, I can remember this like it was yesterday. And I found out that I got into Princeton. Now I'm getting recruited by some other schools that have full scholarships, but Princeton does not have athletic scholarships. They have financial aid based on how much your parents make. And the tuition at that point in time was something around $13,000, which, sounded like a lot of money to a kid from the south side of Chicago. Our family contribution was something like, let's just call it $2,000 a year. That might as well have been $2 million to me and our family, right? And so when I got all the paperwork from Princeton, I made the decision on where I was going to college. And so the scene played out like this. My dad's at his spot on the table. It's after dinner. Misha's gone. She doesn't nowhere to be found. She's like, doesn't want to hear it. My mom's doing the dishes, which is right next to us. And he said, "So, where do you think you want to go to school?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to go to the University of Washington." And my dad did what dads do when you've made a decision he doesn't agree with. And he tilted his head all the way back to the back of his chair. And for the listening audience, my dad was disabled. He walked with 2 crutches, but he went to work every day. And he leaned his head back and he leaned his head forward and put his chin down all the way to his chest and used to rub his whiskers on the skin of his neck. It was a thing he liked to do when he was thinking, but you knew he was disappointed. And if he was disappointed, it felt like the whole house was disappointed. And my mom doesn't say a word, and I'm looking at him like, how could he be disappointed? I am going to college for free, and it's a good school. And so he looks up at me and he says, "Tell me, how did you come to your decision?" And I was ready for him because I know my dad and I'm in high school now, and I was prepared for the question. And I said, "Well, they've got a great engineering program, and I was really good at math and sciences, so I thought I was going to be an engineer." I said, "They are not only are they good in a good engineering school, but they're also in the Pac-8, which was the Pac-12 was the Pac-8 back then." And I said, they're in a really good conference, and they play some really good teams. And by my junior year, I might even be able to play." And I said, and that was the second thing. And I said, "But most of all, they're giving me a full scholarship. There's nothing we'd have to pay as a family." And my dad said, "Well, if you pick your school based on how much I have to pay, I'll be very disappointed." And he said it just like that. It wasn't mean. It wasn't shouting. He just said, "I'd be very disappointed." And I was like, holy smokes. And I was thinking in my head that I really did like Princeton, but I knew we couldn't afford it. So he said, "Why don't you think about it overnight, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow, and then, you tell me what your decision is." So Michelle, I was like, I didn't know what to do. But the next day, we come back to the table, and it's the same scenario. Misha isn't there. My mom's doing the dishes. My dad's at the table. And he said, "So did you give it some thought?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said to him, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I actually liked Princeton." And before I could even get the instant out, he slapped his hand down on the table and said, "Fine, you'll go to Princeton."
But he was wise that he made it sure that it was your decision, that he didn't dictate it to you.
He did. And I said, "Well, what about the money?" And he said, "Don't worry about the money. We'll figure it out." And he said, we plan for you guys to go to college." And he said it with such confidence. And the punchline of the story is, when he passed away, my mom and I are going through all his documents and stuff, and I run into this envelope, one of these big manila envelopes that's got a bunch of receipts in it, and I look through, and it's all of these credit card receipts. And I was like, "Mom, what were all these credit card charges to Princeton for?" She was like, "Give me that. You weren't supposed to see that." And it turns out that they financed the part of the tuition they had to pay with credit cards. And you talk about the ultimate sacrifice, but it changed our lives, right? And for 2 people who didn't go to college to have the foresight to know that this was a better decision for me than going anywhere else, it just shows a level of, you talked about it. It talks about a level of love and sacrifice for your children.
And talk about making a way out of no way. They did what they had to do.
Yeah. And they did, and never complained once. Never heard a peep out of them. And I wouldn't have known it had I not found that envelope.
They had a plan. We all know that food waste is bad for the planet, but that doesn't mean we're ready to start a compost pile or we're okay with having a smelly fruit fly condo compost pail on the counter. That's why I am so into the Mill Food Recycler. The whole idea is to make keeping food out of the trash as easy as dropping it into the trash. I just add my scraps, and I mean like almost anything. I mean anything from chicken wing bones to avocado pits to cantaloupe rinds, and Mill runs automatically while I sleep. I can keep filling it for weeks, and it never smells. What really surprises me is the peace of mind. I used to feel guilty every time I tossed out wilted spinach or half-eaten leftovers. Now I just drop them into the bin, open the lid, drop them in, and I know that they're going to a better place. You can use the grounds in your garden or feed them to your chickens, but me, I have Mill get them to small farms for me so farmers can grow more food. You just send those grounds off to farms in little boxes that Mill can provide, and they will turn that back into real food for real animals. That's such a good feeling. It's a full circle moment that I didn't know that I needed. You can have your own full circle moment. Try Mill risk-free and get $75 off at mill.com/YMK podcast. That's mill.com/YMK podcast. When you were young, there is another story that I know about that I want to ask you about because I've heard it from one side and not the other. And this is interesting because I spent time with your sister more than you, so I hear things and now I get to hear the other side of it. But there's a story that she's talked about, Craig, where you were on a bike and a policeman sees you on this bike and wonders, where'd you get that bike?
Yeah.
Is that your bike? And it turns out it was your bike.
Right.
And your mother had to fuss at this police officer. And,
Yes.
And did the police officer, she got him to apologize to you?
She got him to apologize.
I mean, this is Chicago PD on the south side of Chicago. Let me just say, if you're not familiar with the south side of Chicago, all of my relatives, my father, all his brothers lived on the south side of Chicago. So I'm very familiar with the south side of Chicago because I used to spend so much time there. He had 5 brothers that lived in Chicago. That just didn't happen.
It didn't. It didn't. And
I mean,
tell you,
a police officer stopping a young black man on a bike, that happened all the time. But the idea that then his mama would get the police officer to apologize, that's new.
It was a real lesson for me in parenting because the story goes, my parents saved up enough money to buy me a bike from Goldblatt's, which was a department store. You remember Goldblatt's in Chicago.
Yes.
And they were these yellow 10-speed bikes with the handlebars that went under, like a ram's horn handlebars. It was just your basic 10-speed. But it was a sail bike, right? It was, everybody had them. But the rub was somehow they had forgotten to get the clamps to clamp all of those cables that go from the brakes and the gears all the way down the bike. They come with these plastic clamps. They didn't have clamps. So in order to keep them out of your way, my mom took the twist ties that you get from baggies. Before there were Ziploc bags, these things called baggies that look just like them, but they came with these green and white twist ties. Everybody had them. My mom put them on a bike, and I'm riding my bike, and the policeman stopped me and says, "Where'd you get that bike?" And I was like, "From my house. This is my brand new bike." I was so proud. I just like, dude, thanks for noticing. This is my bike. And he's like, "That's not your bike." And I was like, no, really. He's like, "No, that's not your bike." And then I realized something was wrong because he was starting to get mean about it. And then I still wasn't upset because I knew it was mine. So I was like, no, you're mistaken. This is my bike. I felt like Henry on Goodfellas when he's getting pinched for the cigarettes by the policeman. And he's like, no, I'll take care of it. We're okay. This is okay. That's how I felt. I was that confident. And he didn't believe me. He ends up taking my bike, putting it in the trunk of his car, and taking me home.
In
And
the police car.
in the police car, in the back of a police car. And I was in tears by now because I was like, I'm not that I thought I was guilty, but he didn't believe me. And I was raised in a house where just tell the truth, people will believe you, especially policemen. And this dude would not believe me. And I got home and my mom comes out. I go running in. The guy doesn't believe this is my bike. He thinks I stole it. And I'm like the type tears, I'm beside myself. And my mom's like, going in the house. And then she goes out to the gate. Policeman comes up and I'm on our front porch looking out while she's talking to the policeman. And I see my mom giving him the quiet scream. Like she is, you can tell, because I've gotten it. She is reaming this dude out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to make it worse. Meanwhile, my bike is in the trunk and he's shaking his head. And after about 15 minutes, he goes in the trunk of the car, takes out the bike, gives it to my mom, closes the trunk, and drives away. And my mom calls me out. I get the bike, take it in, and my mom's still mad, right? She's still mad. So mad that the next day she called the police station to report him and to tell his supervisor that he should come back and apologize to her son for accusing him of stealing a bike. And she said that she told him, because you got a kid here who really believes in law enforcement, and right now he's not believing in you guys. So you ought to come here and fix this. And sure enough, the next day that dude came back, rang the doorbell. My mom called me down. He apologized to me, which I was very happy for, shook my hand like a man, and then was off. And then I could tell before he left, my mom gave him a few more of the quiet scream. You could see her head shaking. She was still mad. And I said at the outset, it was such a lesson in parenting, in believing in your child and then sticking up for your child. And Kelly and I do that all the time. Like, we believe our kids when they tell us something. And if they need our help, we're going to give it to them. And it was one of those things that it gives you confidence to be able to walk around the streets, because you got your parents have your back. And a lot of our friends growing up, their parents didn't always have their back.
That's an extraordinary story that he came back, rang the doorbell, stood in your foyer, and shook your hand.
Shook my hand, and I wish. After all these years, I don't have any idea where that guy was, but it's like you get older and you're not mad anymore. I wish we could have gone over that story with him again, because he would probably laugh at it now too. But I'm sure he learned something from my mom in that interaction as well.
And if you figured out, oh my goodness, that's the person who is the brother of the person who went on to live.
that would be a little icing on the cake.
Your relationship with your sister is very close.
Yes.
Was that particularly important? You talked about your mom staying in the White House and being close to the girls and being there, but you also remained very close to her. And it's hard because when people move into a space like that, sometimes they have to not sever ties, but it's harder to remain tethered to the people you love just because you're in such a bubble. You guys figured out how to deal with that. And was that really important to give the family the support that they needed, when they were going through those years?
My sister was really good and really intentional about her time in the White House vis-a-vis how it would affect her family, right? So she always invited us to everything that we would want to come to. And it was really hard for us because at the time I was a Division I head basketball coach. So I've got like these 15 other people's children that I was responsible for. So it made it really hard to be together. But Mish and Barack were always very intentional about, all right, let's make sure we get together when we can get together. Right. And so for us, that was the 4th of July. We'd always be at the White House and we'd stay like a week with them in the summertime, and on Thanksgiving. And you've been a part of some of those Thanksgiving dinners. Well, when I was coaching, we made sure that we played a game in DC over the Thanksgiving holiday. So I was able to bring my team to DC, do a service day. We play Howard, or we play George Washington, or we play Towson or Maryland, anybody in the Maryland area. We play a game, and then we'd have Thanksgiving dinner at the White House with my team. So, they made it really easy for us to be together as a family when we could. And not only did we do that, but they would take the kids when they would go travel on some of their trips. So that was wonderful. And then my sister would come out to Corvallis when she could to spend some time with us out there. But it was really important for the both of us because, as you mentioned, Michelle, we grew up together. I mean, we were like each other's first best friends, right? Like, she did everything I did growing up. People don't realize it, but she could play basketball, she could play softball, she could play baseball, she could run track. She did everything that me and my friends did until it got too hot outside and she didn't want to be outside because it was too hot. But my dad would take me to the park, or we'd be out in the front of the house doing stuff. She'd be right out there with her glove and her bat. And so we were together always. And the first time we were apart was when I went to Princeton and she was still in high school. And then she ended up coming to Princeton. So we were back together again. And then before they moved to the White House, we lived 4 houses down from each other. So our kids went to school together. My mom picked up all of our kids from the lab school together and took them to one of our houses. And then we'd be together on the weekends for soccer. And it was just like, so when we got to be older and jobs moved us apart, it was a real adjustment to not being together a lot. And so those times in the White House, it was very intentional. And now that they're out and she and I are doing IMO, our podcast together, it's like, it's the best because we get to see each other every single month and we're laughing and joking like we haven't seen each other for 6 weeks. It's been really neat.
Well, that's the hidden dividend of the podcast, is that it keeps you guys, and I think your parents, Marion and Fraser, would be so well pleased that you have figured out how to remain in each other's lives in this way. What part of your mom and dad live on in your kitchen today? You live in Wisconsin. You talked about cleaning out her kitchen. Are there physical things that are in the kitchen? And are there things from her repertoire of recipes that have made its way into what you all put on your dinner table?
Yeah. So, my mom never had like a book of recipes. Like it always seemed like she either cooked from this cookbook she had, which I don't know what happened to it. And maybe Mish knows what happens to it because, it could be part of the stuff that's at the foundation now. I don't know. But she had some little recipes around. For example, she made homemade cakes. She made me red velvet cakes. So we have the red velvet cake recipe that our oldest son, Avery, made for his wedding reception. And it was absolutely delicious. Like Mish makes red rice. I haven't made the red rice yet. I have her lemon chicken recipe and I make her fried chicken. So that lives on in our house.
Can we talk about the fried chicken for a minute?
Yeah, we can talk about the fried chicken.
Because I heard you say you make the fried chicken.
I make the fried chicken. like you, I found some people who make really good fried chicken, but every now and then I just want to make my own fried chicken and I'm not a cook either. I'm not one who is in the kitchen a lot. I can cook, breakfast, I can grill, I can do that kind of stuff.
Fried chicken's ambitious for someone who doesn't cook. What's the secret? What do you do to get the crisp on that chicken?
My mom's secret was that she had 3 bowls in her mixture. She had a flour bowl. She had an egg bowl.
Okay.
Now, both of those sound very familiar to you, right?
Yep.
The 3rd bowl, ice water.
Ooh.
Ice water, Michelle.
Say more.
So she would dip the chicken in the ice water.
Uh-huh.
Put the chicken in the egg wash.
Okay.
Put it in the flour.
Uh-huh.
Let it sit. And do the same thing. After that, coat it a little bit. She'd do a little bit more egg wash and a little bit more flour, and then ice water, and put it right into the skillet, into the grease. And ice water and grease really don't.
Yeah.
You got to be really careful. So you gotta get it in there and get it cooking right away. And it was the crispiest chicken. Back in the day, before there was extra crispy, my mom had extra crispy chicken, and so it's a process. Like you can't rush it, right? You got to take your time, and the grease has to be hot, but it can't be too hot, or it'll burn the skin before the chicken gets done.
Yeah.
So, and then what I've added to her recipe was, back in the day, nobody had spicy chicken, right? So she would season her chicken before she put the first coating on it. And she'd season the flour with salt, pepper, seasoned salt, which everybody used back then, and a little bit of garlic salt. And that was it. What I've added to it is a little bit of paprika and crushed red pepper that I put on the chicken, right on the chicken. So it gets sealed by the coating to add a little kick to it. Some people put hot sauce. Some people put hot sauce in their egg wash. I don't do that. I like the red pepper flake because it's got some heat to it without adding more liquid to it.
Well, as you know, I've said many times on this podcast, I outsource my fried chicken now because I found someone in Washington, D.C. who's so wonderful at it that I don't much make it. But I'm going to have to try this because it sounds a little bit almost like Korean fried chicken, the technique of coating it twice. So you get air in between there, and that's where you might get that flakiness where you get kind of a double crisp.
Yeah. And I don't know where my mom got the idea of the ice water, but one day she was with just fried chicken with just flour and no egg wash. It was just flour, throw it in there, and it was fine. That was fine fried chicken too. And then one day when people started talking about extra crispy, and I believe it was KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, came out with the first extra crispy, or it could have been a Chicago, and I don't even know if this was just Chicago, but you remember Church's chicken.
And I remember Harold's chicken.
And Harold's chicken. So Harold's chicken was sort of naturally crispy too. And then one day she had this ice water out there, and she's frying chicken all over the place. And it was the crispiest chicken we had. So yeah, give it a try and let me know how it turns out.
Yeah. You're gonna have to work fast and with some skill, and definitely have an apron on, because that water is gonna make that oil pop all over the place.
It is. You got to be very careful. And now people are frying chicken outside and doing all this other stuff. So there's ways to do it. But the thing that that keeps me from making it more is cleaning up.
Yeah.
Cleaning up that mess afterwards.
And all the grease and everything.
It's all over the stove.
I saw Instagram has that thing where when the grease is cooling, you put baking soda or something in it so it congeals.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to get rid of. But cleaning up after fried chicken that's the other reason to make it, so somebody else can clean it up. Like they have KP duty. You provided us, and we'll put it on the website, the recipe for a slightly healthier version a fried chicken, which is the oven fried chicken with lemon sauce.
Yes.
And that's something that it sounds like you don't make that as much, but that was something that your mom made a lot.
When my mom figured that, okay, enough of the frying chicken and cleaning up the kitchen, she made this oven fried chicken with lemon sauce, and your listeners will love that because it's easy, it's less mess, and it takes a little bit longer because you're cooking it in the oven.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I tell you, it comes out crispy enough where you think somebody fried this chicken and it was oven fried.
This is definitely, I road test the recipe. So I'm looking forward to trying both the fried chicken and the oven fried chicken. And I'll let you know how it goes.
Good. Well, that's the recipe that's handwritten by my mom. So if you can't read it, just call me.
No, I can, it's really lovely to see her handwriting. I think our mothers all went like to the same school for penmanship because it was so particular and
yes,
and quite beautiful. Craig, I have loved talking to you. This has been a lot of fun. I have a real hankering for some fried chicken right now.
Well, this has been a real treat, and you mentioned it earlier. You spend more time with my sister, but any time that we get to spend with you, our family just absolutely loves being around you. You're always so gracious.
Right back at you. Tell Kelly I said hello. She's one of my favorite people. I love her.
Tell Broderick we said hi, and we just enjoy listening to you do your show, and I'm so happy for you, and keep those recipes coming.
Now, before we go, I want to remind you that our inbox is always open, and we would love to hear your stories about your mama's kitchen, stories about recipes that still resonate with you, maybe thoughts on some of the episodes you've heard here at Your Mama's Kitchen. You can record yourself and share either a voice memo or a video with us. You can send that to ymk@highergroundproductions.com for a chance for your voice to be featured in a future episode or featured in a voice memo at our website. And speaking of the website, if you want to try one of these chicken recipes, the fried chicken or the baked oven chicken with lemon sauce, you can find the recipe at our website at yourmamaskitchen.com. And while you're there, you will see all the recipes from all the previous episodes, and there's some great stuff there. For everybody at home, thanks for joining us. Please come back next week because here at Your Mama's Kitchen, we're always serving up something delicious. Take care and be bountiful.